Oh, yeah.
Tell me you're joking time.
You said what?
Said it's tell me you're joking time.
Okay.
Little intro roll in. Figured I'd bounce us into the episode with a little bit of probably some notes and tunes and melodies and harmonies that you're somewhat familiar with, right?
Very. Very familiar with this song.
Mound City March from the Illphonics, and joining me today, Mr. Larry Morris. How's it going? I'm
good. How are you today?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you taking the time to come chop it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So let me just, out of the gate, when you hear your tunes these days, you know, because you guys got quite a catalog now over a significant number of years.
That's true.
You hear it pop off. What happens in your gut? What happens in your head these days?
It takes me back to moments as a band, you know, when we were writing these songs. You know, every song has a story.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. It's like people, do you remember when you wrote that song? Not necessarily the moment that I wrote it, but I always remember the time frame and what we were thinking as a group.
So Mound City March, obviously alluding to our backyard here. That's what we were popping off with. What's the story behind that one in particular?
Mound City March was just more of the group was really trying to experiment with more of a soul bounce sound. I remember at that time, Keith and Kevin, so Keith is our keyboardist and a vocalist, and Kevin is our guitarist. He does vocals too. They were living on Kingsland in University City.
Sure.
And so they were fooling around with that sound. Chaz came in, who's a drummer, but he also plays keys. Everybody's kind of multifaceted in the group. And they really wanted to take it a different direction with the sound, and that song came up. And when I heard it, I was like, that sounds like some St. Louis, New Orleans hybrid bounce.
So let me do this. So that was a point, because you guys released that in 2020, that whole album. There's like 700 songs on the album too.
Yeah, that was a re-release of songs we had already did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that song was, oh my God, that song had been recorded 6 years prior.
So let's do this then. I'm gonna play around with your head a little bit.
Okay.
When you hear this one. Right?
Yep.
I see you closing your eyes. I see you leaning in. And oh, by the way, go over on YouTube if you want to see us chop it up.
Yeah.
This is how we do.
Yeah.
Illphonics presents Sound, debut album, right?
Yes, that was our debut.
2009. You guys were puppies back then.
Babies.
I'm not going to do the math, but I know it was a long time ago.
It was.
Talk about the origination of the band, maybe, and leading up to this first album.
Yeah, so Illphonics is kind of a hybrid of our growing up in U City, a good majority of us, and Webster University.
Sure.
So before I got to Webster University, Keith and I always made music. So let me give you all some points of reference. Keith is the keyboard player in the group, one of the leader vocalists outside of myself. Chaz is our keys drummer, but he's mainly known for the drumming. He U-City too. Spanky, or he likes to be referred to as Simon. For those that don't know him, we know him, so we call him Spanky. He's our bass player. Kevin is our guitarist. So that's the original five. We had people come in and out, but these have always been the core five. Mm-hmm. Four of us, Spanky, Simon, Chaz, Keith, and myself, we're from University City. We grew up there. And so Chaz is a cousin. He's a distant cousin of mine. So I've always known Chaz. We would go to family functions and see each other. Spanky, he would come to our rap sessions at University City. We used to have these amazing ciphers in our senior cafeteria. It was a main cafeteria and a small cafeteria.
You talking about it in the high school?
High school.
City High School?
Oh, yeah, yes. Yeah. It has birthed a lot of our MCs in St. Louis. And so Simon would come over and watch us cipher. Chaz would come over too. Keith would play the keyboard, you know, and I would kick beats. We just created these rap sessions. So that's that part. I get to Webster University, and I'm just going to focus on audio engineering, which is my degree. So I get into the program. I'm figuring out how to navigate college. Life goes on. And what happens is one day I bring a stack of raps to the studio. And the original lead guitarist, Tom Carpenter, he sees the stacks of raps and he's like, what's those? I'm like, oh, well, some rhymes. I just brought them. I went home to see my mother and I just wanted to go through them. And he was like, man, it would be cool if we kind of did this band thing. Let's check it out and see what it would be. I'm like, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Kevin and I we met my freshman year. We were already working on some music, just kind of a side project. And Keith has always been my right-hand man. We do all of our projects together. It's 90% of my projects, Keith has tracks on them. So what I did was say, hey, let's take some of Kevin's songs and Keith's songs and let's put it together and make an album.
Yeah.
So that album ended up being Walking the Mason-Dixon Line, which was a Fallout and Friends. We needed a drummer and a bass player, so I called my cousin and said, would you drum? And he was like, why not? You know, he was drumming in the jazz band at U City. Him and Simon, Chaz and him and Simon were in jazz band at University City. I called Simon like, hey, would you be willing to play bass on this? And it was funny. Simon was like, I'll play if Chaz is the drummer. So I was like, okay, it all works out.
Yeah.
So we kind of get together as a conglomerate around these songs and they're playing these songs. What happens is on the campus, it starts to get popular. And I'm involved in student life heavily at the time. I'm working at the Multicultural Center. I'm working with my buddy Benny, who's now up in Minnesota.
You were talking about at Webster.
At Webster University, correct. Thank you. And it ends up becoming a scenario where we create this First Fridays where it's just an open mic. And this is where the band starts to play. And we would only get like a 10-minute set, but our songs were really, really cool. And we were just writing new material.
Yeah.
And so kids would come from other universities to come watch us play. So we like, maybe we're on to something. And then we get offered the opportunity to open for Lupe Fiasco at Webster. This is when Lupe was just starting to blow up. So we open for Lupe. It's a thing. People are like, okay. So we're like, maybe we can gig. So you remember Natural Fact Deli that was in Webster Groves?
Yeah, I moved into Webster in 2006. So yes, but I had little ones. So my outbound activities was very limited.
Yeah. Yeah, so. I understand. We were playing at places like that, the Natural Fact Deli, just little, I don't want to call it a hole in the wall because it was a nice little restaurant, but just, small spaces. Then we get offered the biggest opportunity, and it's to open for the Roots. And so we opened for the Roots, and we did really, really
Which venue was that?
That was Webster. It was the next year.
It was at the theater.
Yeah, it was the next year. And it was kind of a crazy scenario because I worked at the MCISA who brought the Roots.
Yeah.
So people were like, you had an in. I'm like, maybe I did, but people love the band.
Yeah, welcome to the real world. I had an in.
Yeah, I guess. I'm like, but we were a really good band, and we were a really good baby band. And so we opened for the Roots, and we did well, and at this particular juncture, I'm getting ready to graduate, and the guys hated Fallout and Friends. They hated that name. We had already released that project called Walking the Mason-Dixon Line. But that was just more of a, here you go, here's a CD.
Yeah.
They're like, we need to change our name. And so on the campus of Webster, I was an RA at the time. I got a chance to rent out the clubhouse. And I couldn't leave because I was on the call. And we sat there and we debated for 3 hours about a name, and we came with Illphonics. And it was from there that Illphonics became a thing.
Yeah.
And then we kind of rolled from Webster into the St. Louis music scene. But the last part of this equation is that Gary Gottlieb, who was one of our main professors there at the time, he's now the president of AES in the U.S. He's, he said, I'll record your album at the studio. So we recorded this album literally in 2 days.
At the university, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We went, if you listen to sound, it sounds live because it was.
Yeah, you had to cut it live.
Yeah, and I went in and recorded vocals for like 16 songs.
So for the listeners, here's our path today. We talked about it a little bit before coming on air. What I'm wanting to do today is, get this first. Let's get a little background, a little foundation, talk about you, your band, your own musical experiences, etc. But we're going to move into kind of what you already alluded to is kind of the St. Louis scene and being able to open and play and do that kind of stuff. And then obviously we're going to talk about your current role with the Kranzberg Arts Foundation and specifically Maddie here in a little bit.
Right.
So I just want to tee that up for you, the listener. That's where we're going today. We'll probably take a few left turns here and there, but that is what it is.
That's what makes the ride fun.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about, though, your influence and the strategy, or maybe the draw to the type of band that you guys were out of the gate, because if you take a look at music, popular music, from I'm a little older, right? You start in the early '90s, mid '90s, and up, and you think about what hip hop looked like, what rap looked like. It was very instrument driven. De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest. These were the bands that were kind of dominating. And you had Run DMC coming down the pipe. Well, not coming down the pipe. They were in the pipe. They were the pipe, right?
Right. The originals.
But there was a huge band sound influence on popular hip hop music during that time. You rush up to the 2000 and going into the 2000s, you start to see more of a push and a momentum into electronic rap, more true studio-based stuff that was very electronic. You guys are kids at a time where that transition is already occurring, but you stay in the full sonic realm is what I'll call it.
Right.
Talk about why. Did you have that discussion? Because popular rap and hip hop at that time was not constructed of bands like you guys were kicking off in your truly formative years.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. So that's an excellent point. For us, it's twofold. At the time we were coming of age, those hip hop bands that were live bands were very much rock hip hop.
Yeah.
It was very much, rap with the rock sound behind it. Then the Roots are in existence, and they're more soul R&B. Not to say that they couldn't do more. Clearly they're amazing, but that was the sound of the time. We came along at a time where a lot of people didn't respect the instrumentation of hip hop, we felt.
Yeah.
We felt that people looked at bands that were around hip hop artists and was like, oh, that's a rapper with the band.
Yeah.
And what we made a pact was, and it's still to this day, was we were going to create a hip hop band.
Well, let me ask you this then. You're a U City kid, and all your peers were predominantly U City kids, and the most famous U City kid at that time was one of the biggest rappers in the world, Signor Nelly, right? How much did that, community connection, that that hometown love for his success, did you guys talk about, like, look what he's doing? Because what you were doing, clearly by the sound, was kind of, and he had been established for some time at that point. Yeah. But you started out in a direction that was not in line with what most of the nation would consider St. Louis hip hop, right?
Yeah.
Did that come up in conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it came up, but the group already knew that. When Nelly's Country Grammar dropped, we were in high school.
Yeah.
So we are at the epicenter of all this amazing things that are happening. We're walking to the baseball field and seeing Murphy Lee in his banana-colored Mercedes-Benz.
Yep.
U City was a place where MCs are bred and born, and having your own style was always more important than anything else. I always had a distinct, it's a lyrical, it's influenced by the South, but it's very much influenced by East Coast rap. And we mixed in the staccato and everything, so the group was cool with that. When we first started off, I had to transition a little bit because I had come from the world of rapping on corners and at tables, and it's usually man to man. It's me versus you, or me versus a group of people. So the early music reflects that sound. But as we developed, it became less just lyrical MCing and more songwriting. But the group always embraced it. And on the other side of the coin, JB, U City is a very musical school.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people who loved hip hop and would rap play instruments. They would love playing trumpet just as much as MCing, right? And I was one of the more predominant MCs of our class and our group, about a 4 or 5 year period. But my friends played instruments. They made music.
What was your core instrument? What was the go-to?
I was an MC in the purest form. I didn't play anything.
Oh.
So for me, I showed up with, I was one of the people who was really into recording music and, playing with synthesizers, so I could make tracks and do it, but I didn't come from that pedigree of learning how to play an instrument.
You were the Black Bono.
Pretty much. Pretty much. And, but I was always in proximity to really great musicians.
Yeah.
And they helped me translate my ideas, or they would be like, I want to just do something with it. Because they see MC in my neighborhood, they see it as an art form. It's just like playing an instrument.
Yeah.
So yeah, it worked out.
So obviously during that time, you talked about the roots both in influence and obviously activation. As you started to kind of make this sound, going around running the circuit here, from the Loop to some clubs that were down on Wash Ave and different areas, what was the experience, or what was maybe the initial kind of reaction to the band? Because again, I'm going to go back to at that time,
right?
Pop music, hip hop in particular, was not big stage,
right?
And you were a big stage band.
Mm-hmm.
How was it received within the marketplace early on? Can you talk about some of the experiences maybe that stand out, both from a micro club standpoint and obviously opening for an artist like The Roots?
No, I love the question. So for us, it wasn't received well at first. I remember we were trying to get into the Blueberry Hill for a hip hop night, and a promoter who will forever remain nameless basically told the person that was trying to connect us he didn't really like us. He thought we was whack. Okay. When we would go to venues, hip hop didn't have the best reputation for some reason. People associated with violence and just the club getting tore up. Shout out to 3 6 Mafia, but it wasn't like that for real. So we didn't have those opportunities. What opened the door for us was, and I give them all the love, was the Midwest Avengers.
Oh,
and,
yeah. John and crew.
Yeah, 100%. I always acknowledge them. We actually met them in the Battle of the Bands, the so-called tasty Battle of the Bands. Them and not Wakarusa, them and Mattahoochee.
Sure.
We battled in that first year we battled, we came in second place to Mattahoochee. Mattahoochee loved us so much, they started to give us connections and start to explain how to navigate it. And I will always show them, I think his name was Beto, the bass player, if I can remember correctly, but he was really nice. The second year we come back, we won. We beat Midwest Avengers and a few other people. And instead of them being like, screw those young guys, they were like, hey, you guys are dope. How can we show you love?
Collab.
They collabed. They gave us an opportunity to open for them. And they started to tell us about what it could look like to tour outside of St. Louis. So I always want to make sure I give them that credit. They kind of opened those doors. And then we had other opportunities that really came about when people heard us and noticed that I wasn't very vulgar. I'm talking with me and you off the mic, I'll speak my mind freely. But when I'm on stage, I always kind of kept it kind of.
Well, again, I mean, that's another one of those compare contrast of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Not only was the sound unique to what was being pumped over the radio airwaves,
right,
which is kind of a dinosaur anymore,
right?
But it was also, you started to see this acceleration of anger. Kind of the dark side of hip hop became what was sought after. The whole a cute story and a melody that was to a degree shunned upon. And what was it about kind of being cognizant of your own language, choice of words, or maybe themes? What kept you in the glass half full world? Yeah, no, I'm come from the crunk era, and at that period of time, hip hop became almost like punk rock for a minute. Yeah,
it was like knock a person out, throw bowls, and then don't get me wrong, for the club it was a good time, it was fun, but. Exactly. There's always the liabilities that come with that. And I still think that music is great. I listen to it to this day. But for me, I don't know if it was more conscious as much as I was with a group of guys that really wanted to take it to the next level. And I think I just started thinking about how do I put songs together that allow us to be in spaces that we wouldn't normally be able to be in. And don't get me wrong, we have our songs that are very much in that vein of more dark, killer music notes is crazy. But we had a lot of other songs that allowed us to be put in spaces that other hip hop acts may not have had the chance to be in, because one, the instrumentation was great.
Yeah.
And two, the language of the songs, even if it was a curse word here and there, it wasn't overly or over the top. It was something that, you know, you could work with.
Well, whenever it's edited for radio, it didn't sound like a different song.
Yeah, like we didn't have that, but you know, but I stuck with it because I noticed the trend. I was like, okay, we can play at this park and get a payout because the music allows for a 45-minute set.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of stuck over time. And as we've gotten older, I've gotten a little bit more loose, but I still kind of keep that center for the most part.
Yeah. So how much of that was part of, you know, because we've talked about St. Louis as a music town, and I think if you really dumb it down, you know, it's a gig town.
Right.
Yes. It's about playing. It's about playing out. It's about playing. You know, you got your regular sessions. You know, for the singer-songwriters of the world, they're going to be at Stagger Inn, or they're going to be at Venice, or they're going to be at very predictable places on very predictable nights. You go across to the other venues, you start to see the volume go up, you see the themes go up. So as you're building this band, number one, if you want it to be your profession, right? You want the band to hit. This is the other thing I was wondering about because, you know, hip hop, or if it's a rapper, you've got a crew, but it's usually a small crew. You're rolling around with a 5-piece, and you're probably adding instrumentation for certain shows and gigs for sound and effect. You know, there's a lot more responsibility that goes along with that.
Right.
And then you have to try and get shows in which to get paid. Look, if it's take the Manis Brothers, right?
Yeah.
When they travel, it's a 2-piece.
Right.
So if the guarantee is 200, they each get 100. Well, if you travel around with a 5, 6, 7-piece and the guarantee is 200, well, do the math.
Yeah.
Right. How much was the decision making on the band and the gigs? Where did money come into play as to how you decided to roll this thing out or push it into market?
We spent 2 or 3 years just working St. Louis. And so I want to speak to all of that. We just had a pound of pavement. We wanted to tour, and we had like a one-off every now and then, but we just couldn't get out there quite yet. But what we did as a group was we formed the LLC, and we looked at it as a business. And you know, as a business owner, you don't get paid until the business gets paid.
Right.
And so we had an early on philosophy of we're going to put everything into our band account as a means to subsidize us going on the road. Yeah. So what people don't know about the group is we were not paying ourselves. We were paying Illphonics. That allowed for us to eventually get a van. It allowed for us to first we started with just 2 cars. And we were just going on these trips to different cities.
5-hour circle.
5-hour circle. That's what we did. Kansas City, Chicago. You know, we would just play these types of cities. The in-betweens, Columbia, Missouri. I can go on for days. And we were not making money, but we were building a fan base.
Yeah.
And that was something that was crucial to our growth because I think when you sit in St. Louis and you only get the feedback of people that are in proximity to you, your growth only goes so far. We were going out and experiencing people in different states and different places that when they engaged with our music, it was a totally different vibe. So we were coming back writing, not for St. Louis. We were here writing.
You were artists.
Yeah, we're taking it on the road, or we would go on the road and take songs we hadn't played in St. Louis and test them out in different markets, then come back, refine them, and then we would play them here, right? So to your point, it's one of those situations. I look at St. Louis on Rocky when he's in the barn getting ready to fight the Russian boxer.
Rocky, just watched it a week ago, man.
Yeah.
The appropriate times.
Yeah, right, exactly. It was a more rough way of training to get ready for that fight. I feel like St. Louis as a gigging city is very much that way. You cut your teeth here. You got to play here. You got to get out in the mud here and figure it out. And if you can do it here, then you can take it to other markets, and it's a little bit more refined. It's a little bit different. But people just don't see the value in playing here. And I'm like, there's deep value in playing here.
Well, speaking of that, because I literally had this conversation a little while back because I was lucky enough to have lived in Chicago for about 7-8 years.
Right.
I was, a lot of my friends were in music in the industry. So I was kind of privy to a lot of experiences, both within the neighborhoods, at the local venue, a handful of open mics, go check it out, and and obviously shows.
Right.
And the one thing that kind of in hindsight that I think about, and I think it's true today. In fact, I know it's true today. When you travel around this country and you go into, quote, a music city, and you go and you listen to the locals, inevitably there's talent. Every city has talent. But I do think there's a different kind of level or a bar here. And I think it's probably for both good and bad reasons. But you talk about Webster University being a music school. It's got a deep music program there. Right across the river, you've got SIUE.
100%.
Which is, one of the top jazz programs in the country.
Yes.
Right? And then you have just everybody playing, right? What is it about this town that you think, maybe, what is the secret sauce in your opinion that always results? Now, forget about success. We'll talk about success in a second and how we measure that. But when you listen to the music, whether it's a band like Illphonics, whether it's a hip hop artist like a Nelly, or a dirty rock band like the Manis Brothers, whatever, it doesn't matter. The level is always really, really high. In your opinion, what feeds that the most? Because it is different than other cities. Like I said, there's talent in other cities, but I don't think it's as broad and as deep as what we have here.
I can make it very simple, and I've made this argument numerous times. We are a fusion city, and what does that look like? We look at Miles coming from East St. Louis and how he takes it and takes jazz to the next level. I told Ryan Marquez, who's from Kansas City, but he makes St. Louis his home. He's like, Kansas City has a pure jazz love, and it's cool. I said, but in St. Louis, Marquez, what you see here is a player will go play gospel on Sunday, go play with the rock band on Wednesday, go play with a hip hop band on Friday, and then go play jazz on Saturday. And you got to be proficient in every single one. And if you're doing this most of the year, 4 or 5 years out, you learn different skills that other players just don't have. We are a city where you have to know the songbook in its totality. We don't get to pick a genre.
Yeah.
If it's rock, which St. Louis is a home of rock, you got to know it.
Thanks to KC95.
There you go. If you play jazz, like you said, we have great jazz, schools. You got to know it. And I think that has made our level of excellence much higher than a lot of cities, because if you get the call, you have to be ready. You got to know how to play the music.
Do you think that is also a byproduct of why we tend to... there's a lot of different reasons why I think musicians in the music marketplace here is still lagging other markets in which industry exists and more opportunity for artists from a financial standpoint.
Right.
But do you think that maybe what you're describing, where take that individual that plays that church on Sunday, jazz on Monday, rock on Wednesday, boom, 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 that they're all really, really proficient at all these things. But, if you were to say, for example, Chicago, you go back to the 90s in particular and early 2000s, there was two camps. You had kind of the rap hip hop camp that was predominantly Centerline South, and then on the north side you had kind of alt rock. You had kind of the Wilco influence. You had the Smashing Pumpkins were still kind of riding a wave.
Right.
There were two camps.
Right.
Yes, there's other genres that were big there, but let's be clear. From a global perspective, when people thought of Chicago sound, there was two camps.
Right.
Therefore, here's where I'm going with this, and you know where I'm going with this.
When
you think of St. Louis, and in spite of the talent pool, the word fusion isn't a... musicians know what it is, artists know what it is, cultural connoisseurs know what fusion means, maybe, or at least they'll try to define it. But when it comes to the average Joe or Jane looking around and wanting to engage, they have no clue what fusion is.
At all.
Do you think that's... how do you view that as far as a plus or minus to St. Louis's ability and or inability to break out when it comes to music relevance?
No, that's a great question. Like if you go to New Orleans, it's bounce.
Bingo.
You know what I mean? You go to Houston on the hip hop side, it was chopped and screwed. Atlanta elevated the crunk sound. Memphis had horrorcore rap. It was a different type of vibe. we have never ever landed on anything. And the gift and the curse of that, let's go with the curse. The curse is that we don't have a particular sound
Or story.
or story. Our story is, and this is the gift, so many people have come through here and we're good at taking and putting pieces together and creating something very new. And even though there's not something that's identifiable, what you realize with St. Louis is that is what makes us really amazing, because you can come here and pluck an artist out of this city and put them in any market in the country and they'll thrive as an artist playing wise. You know what I mean? They can play the music. And if you pay attention, a lot of the tours that go around the country, the major tours, there's somebody either from St. Louis or they've come through this city. And I think that's what makes us very, very powerful, is our ability to use a different sets of skills.
Doesn't it feel a little bit like it's a faceless wrecking crew of a town in so much that, to your point, right? You can pick any macro tour, right? You go to these bands and there's going to be somebody that has either that is from here and or has some deep connections here, but we tend to not score, that quote lead role.
Yeah.
In spite of, all the other things. Where's the miss in your opinion? Why do you think that doesn't happen as often as it should, based on the volume of talent that we do produce?
I think that comes from multiple things. This city has been a city where people will get started, but they don't finish here, right? We don't see the refinement over time. Like, I think in other places, people put their flag down and they can build there in a way that you can see a sound develop. St. Louis is a city, and it's going to tie into the lack of that infrastructure, right? Yeah. That you can get here, you can gig, you can play a lot, and the artistry is there. All of our creatives say the energy is here, but when it comes to transferring that energy into industry, it doesn't exist. So the artists that I feel who could sculpt this city and take it to the next level as far as identifying a sound or whatever, they typically tend to go somewhere else.
How do you feel whenever you think about energy? And I like that word, and I want to lean into it a little bit. Because St. Louis is really infamous at being self-deflating, basically. Whether it's at the civic, kind of the elevated corporate level, we love to hate. There's a lot of internal finding. There's a lot of my ideas are better. And at the end of the day, no idea really breaks out. We see that the high school thing, right? We are famous. We are the only place in this nation where,
which high school did you go to?
Exactly. In which there's both an immense amount of pride and an immense amount of kind of baked in resent or rivalry. Can be friendly. Often it's not.
Right.
But within the music community too, we have that as well. To your point, we do jazz well, we do rock well, we do country well, we do hip hop well, we do all these things well, right? But what I feel happens more than not, yes, there are some individuals that are like, look, it's all good. I'm going to listen to jazz on Monday and rock on Wednesday and whatever. I'm good. That's St. Louis thing. But more times than not, you do get to smell and sense that a little bit of vitriol, a little bit of jealousy, a little bit of whatever. What do you think needs to? What can we do as a music community to start to get past the whole quote high school thing as it applies to the scenes and the genres?
No, that's a good point. I mean, people are surviving, not thriving here.
Correct.
These are proving grounds. And when you're in proving grounds, you're not refining your skills in a way where you've now shown that you're capable of balling. You're good. But it's more of, how can I up the next person? Because I have to be the one that gets the gig. I have to be the one that's in the room. And I think that stems from just the nature of how St. Louis is built on you over there, I'm over here. I need to show you how we get down over here. And it's a mindset that permeates the city from the civic side all the way down to the music industry. And I just feel if St. Louis is going to go into the next phase, we have to put pieces here that makes it where artists feel that they can stay here and sustain and make a living. If everything is gig to gig, you're never in a thriving mindset.
Well, you talked earlier about the Battle of the Bands or the competition, and we talked about John and Midwest Avengers. It's almost as if like the way I often view it is specifically within a close genre. There's two ways you can look at it. You can either, and human tendency, and especially with musicians, is they're not as kumbaya as they would like to make you believe, is that it's competition, right? On the other end of the spectrum, and I think what you talked about and what you described in your own experience with Illphonics in Midwest and oh my God, I forgot the third band. Mattahoochee, yeah, thank you. There was also guilty by association, right? In which you need somebody within your scene to break out. For example, you go back to, again, I'm going to date myself here. When you think of grunge, what city do you think of?
Seattle.
Seattle, bingo.
Yeah.
Right. So once Mudhoney, then Nirvana, and then here comes Soundgarden, and then Pearl, on and on and on and on. Yes, of course, there was a certain amount of competition within that scene, but let's not kid ourselves. They found a way to ride each other's coattails.
Right.
Here, I don't. In the 10, 20, 30 years I've been around it, I don't see that as much. Would you agree? Do you see it differently? Speak to that for a second.
I think there are communities of people who lift each other up, but it's not all connected. And St. Louis also has a mindset of, I have to be first. I want to be first. And I've always pushed the philosophy to our group, we don't have to be first. We just need to be really good at what we do, and people will gravitate towards that. So I just feel like that's how it plays out. Like I said, love to the Midwest Avengers. That shows you who they are as humans. And they're still doing it to this day with young upcoming artists.
Crazy.
Yeah, they were all about how do we give you a platform. And I just think that we can all shine bright together. But people have to adopt that mindset. I don't want to sound like the Midwest Avengers who would sound like, they don't want to sound like Loot Rat. None of us, we were all great at what we did.
Rat, yeah.
And what was funny is the live hip hop bands, we all got along just fine. We still do today. When we see each other in passing, it's all love. But we knew that we had our own sounds.
How much of it though is also maybe the musical content itself? You talked about the lack of anger or vulgarity in your process. Because you do when you think of like rap or hardcore rap that has come out of St. Louis, specifically in the last 10, 15 years, it's hard. It's very, you're not going to sit around on a Sunday morning, and sip your coffee and be like, oh, I'm going to relax. Boom, put that on. It just doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And some have thrived. They've done well from a pop standpoint.
Right.
Do you ever think about maybe context of the music and the role that it plays in kind of creating a community or building a fan base?
Yeah. I mean, I think hip hop it's been said, I don't think Chuck D said it. I think if I read correctly, he said, I didn't say that, but I don't disagree with it. Hip hop or rap music, because hip hop is more than just rap.
Correct.
But rap music, as we hear it, is the CNN of the streets. What you're hearing these young dudes talk about, or these young folks talk about, is what they're experiencing in their lived lives. Now, people will get to a certain point and be like, they're making this up to sell records. And to a degree, that's true. I'm not going to disagree with that. But I think hip-hop music or rap music has always reflected where we are as a society and where we at as
Well, let me tell you an anecdotal story. It was my own experience, and this is pre-COVID, and I want to get your reaction to this because I was, when I had the studio open over on the Hill, a friend of mine he was a principal at SSD. He was over at the Juvenile Detention Center in Clayton. He asked me to come in. He's like, hey, check it out. We're trying to figure out some things to do for these kids.
Right.
And let's be clear. These kids were grand theft, manslaughter. These are, they're locked up.
Right.
Long story short, we implemented a program in which as long as they didn't kill each other and they did the English and the math and the history, they would get, quote, studio time.
Nice.
So we donated a laptop, some Pro Tools, a mic, blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, there's 6 of them. that kind of cleaned up their acts internally, and they were doing all this. And when I went in, one of the biggest pushbacks I got from the superintendent and the administrators, because they loved the effect it was having on them as far as like calming down and doing the work, but then they listened to the words. Mm-hmm. And you know, when I talk to the kids, I'm like, look, here's the deal. I get it. I said, but the powers that be are going to shut this down if you don't start to, you know, shift up your language. And the one kid said, you don't rap what you don't do.
That's real. No, and that's real.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, I knew that to be true. Mm-hmm. But I was like, God, what a state of affairs we're in for a 15-year-old kid who, you know, would say it was grand theft, whatever it was. Like, that's their mindset. Mm-hmm. So when you think about that, and you know the people that live that life, mm-hmm. and you feel it, when you hear the music, how do you differentiate between your heart, your head, your toe tapping, and all of that? You know, especially here in St. Louis, because we have a very combustible environment when it comes to race relations, you know, via music.
Well, you got to remember some things, and this speaks more to the social piece of this music. I don't necessarily listen these days to a lot of that type of music. It's not for me. I had the privilege of growing up in a neighborhood where I didn't have to steal cars. I didn't have to do any of that. So my story is a little different. But these individuals, they don't get visited by doctors and lawyers. They get visited by the ball players and the hip hop guys. Yeah. And when you are in the situations and the circumstances that they are in, trying to survive and get out of those circumstances, music can be not only a form of escapism, it can be a way to change your life and feed your family. And the people that they're looking at and they're seeing that are inspiring them are the ones that have made it out and have used music as the catalyst to do so. I think people need to understand when it comes to hip hop, outside of the powers that be that control what comes out, right? Because that's a conversation in itself. If you want to see the music change, the environment has to change. And he just blessed the young man's soul that said that where I come from, the time of hip hop I came from, you didn't talk about it if you didn't do it. Yeah. If you never hear me on songs talking about I'm gonna pull out this gun and blow you away, because I wasn't pulling guns out and blowing people away. I was a technical MC. But for that young individual, they're speaking not only what they see, but that may be their way of getting it off their chest where they don't go and do it, you know? So I just think that people want a cleaned up, healthy version of hip hop, but we live in a time where the socioeconomics are getting worse.
There can only be so much Bruno Mars, man.
Exactly. You know, take it for what it is. And to answer to the last piece of what you said, how do I differentiate it? I listen to Project Pat. I love that music. I love 3 6 Mafia. Yeah. I'm not doing seances and talking 666, none of that. I get what the music is. It's art. It's a form of expression. And I don't see it no different from visual art. None of that.
Well, okay, so you teed that up. It's art. It's a form of expression. But in St. Louis, there's also another form of music gigging that has really irked a lot of people for a long time. And it's a massive money generator. Mm-hmm. That is the cover band scene.
Oh, Lord.
Let's go there.
Yeah.
Because that is one thing. You know, we talked earlier about how different cities have different, you know, clear-cut genres that they represent that are popular, et cetera. St. Louis, it is literally the mecca for, quote, power cover bands, to the point where we're not talking about just bands sitting around at Fast Eddie's on the weekend, and even though there are those bands there too. Mm-hmm. We're talking about global tours.
Yes.
Of Elton John, of, you know, name your classic rock band, because that's
Pink Floyd.
Oh yeah, exactly. You know, selling out the pageant multiple nights in a row. When you zoom out, having been an individual that's born and raised here, you've seen it. You know the venues, you know the headliners, you know the names of the band. It might be a weird name, but you know that it's a Journey cover band, right? Mm-hmm. How does it make you feel that as a true artist, not that they're not artists, they are talented, but the lion's share of the financial transactions in this town when it comes to paying artists,
right,
I don't know the exact number, but if I were to guess, I'm going to say 60 to 70% of the money spent on live music is paid to bands that are cover bands.
Yep.
So I think you fundamentally agree with that rough number.
Yeah.
Now, as a creative, speak to that.
Well, this is the thing. I'm not mad at anybody being able to create a cover band and make some money and pay their bills. Get it, 100%. I put more of the impetus on our venue owners and the people in our city who have completely stopped taking risk on live music.
Completely agree.
And that is what hurts me the most. I'm not mad at you having 3 nights a week where Elton John or whatever comes in and they do their thing. We know that's going to generate people. At the end of the day, you know this, JB, bar. We got to move, and that's getting ready to change because people aren't drinking as much, right? So we're going to see how that dynamic plays out.
Perfect storm, man.
Yeah, it is a perfect storm. But what really frustrates me is when we were coming up, there were venue owners. Shout out to people like Rue, you know, with the Gramophone and other venues, Josh Loyal, who took a risk on some hip hop in 2720.
Blue Moon, Blue Moon.
Yeah, Blue Moon, yeah. Like, these individuals took the risk to give live, creative, original music a chance. And what I feel is that we're going through right now, we're stifling that in St. Louis. Instead of bands feeling like, they'll remain nameless because they're actually in one of those large cover bands. I've worked with this individual for years, love him to death. And he basically said to me, when they do their big tribute, like you said, sold out every night, lots of money. When he invites those same people to come see him do his original music,
he can't fill Sears.
He can't even fill the dark room with it, right? And I think that as purveyors of culture and holders of it, we have a responsibility for both and.
Yeah.
Yes, I love what's happening with the cover thing because we're losing some of our favorite artists, so it's cool to get that spirit going. But if we're not allowing creatives and new artists to come in and bring something different, we can't move the needle forward in music, and I think it stifles and it hurts St. Louis as a whole, you know? So
yeah, no, I'm with you. And you alluded to you know, you can't blame the performers because, again, they're out there, they got bills to pay.
100%.
So when you do look at the check cutters, right? Mm-hmm. That being the venues, the booking agents, et cetera, you know, talk a little bit about, like, realistically, what's the sell to them? Because the way I view it, a lot of these individuals they'll avoid the conversation when it comes to truly supporting local artists. And then in one breath, and then in the next breath, they'll talk about all of this St. Louis culture and our heritage and, you know, our vibe, et cetera. And, you know, I feel like that's just kind of a complete miss where they're not connecting the dots between the actual culture and the actual humans, because these bands that they're paying are telling somebody else's story from a faraway land.
That's it.
So when you look at festivals in particular, and this might be a good way for us to transition, what's something that festivals, specifically in our market, should be looking at more when it comes to the local talent? Because if you're going to hire a local band to play covers, you're really kind of kneecapping the display of their actual art.
100%. You know, I work on a team that does Maddie on Music at the Intersection, so I want to put my asterisk there because I don't want anybody to speak or see this and feel like, oh, he's just, it's favoritism. But I'm going to speak truth to light, and I think you would agree with me. What makes our festival special is that we do put on like local creative acts that are not just cover bands. Yeah. We give them an opportunity to get a world-class festival experience and be exposed to thousands of St. Louisans. That has to exist for our city to grow.
You know what? We're gonna come back to that. I'm gonna go back just a little bit because you said something, and as you started off on talking about Maddie, it made me think about the example of an individual, and you didn't name names, but I probably could guess it's one of 10 or more that said, when I play in this cover band, there's 5,000 people there, but when I play my stuff, nobody's there. This community, and we've alluded to it, is a gig community.
Yes.
Artists play to pay, you know, Majority probably play because they love it. You know, they're going to do it, and they may or may not have a day job or whatever. And they, you know, things are normal, but they're good at music. But there is a large contingency of people here that do gig not because gig's a cool, fun word. Yeah. They do it because gig is just another word for job.
That's it.
And what comes along with that is when you, it's supply and demand, right? When you flood your stuff out there, especially from a creative standpoint, and there are options for me as a consumer to quote buy it, consume it. If it's a free walk-in and you're at open mic, or if it's a $5 cover or $10 cover or whatever, you know, on a Thursday, and it's fine. And then here comes Saturday night where you actually, you know, book a room, you do all this work, and you want a $20 cover, and it really is just kind of an iteration of what I either got for free on Monday or paid $5 for on a Wednesday.
Right.
You know, there's supply and demand is proving that the loyalty to that. We've taught the market to not value art compared to a lot of other markets. Would you agree with that?
153 million%. That's where we're at right now. If everything just becomes transactional, which it has become, then I feel it kills the creativity. I think art works when risks are taken. And we are at a particular point where the artists, and let me be clear, artists have to do better at the way they carry their business and hold things. Yeah. You know, I'm not saying that an artist should carry the weight of everything, but being an original band, you have the responsibility to promote and market yourself. You have to pound the pavement to get the fans in the door. And I feel like a lot of artists have gotten comfortable with I'll do a cover, 5,000 people to show up, I'm good to go. Because of the name recognition of another entity that you are replicating that did all of that work for 25 years, you know? Yeah. And again, I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. I'm all for a good cover band. I love it. It's fun. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to our original artists to give them space and place to do shows. Some of them may not work. It takes a while to build fan bases. You know, I used to hear that it usually takes 5 or 6 times around in different cities before you start to build a market. And it's true. I kind of witnessed it with us. You have to allow that space for original music. And I just want it to be a both and. It just feels like it's just one or the other right now. And I think it stifles our music scene.
Well, especially when it comes to the dollar, you know, if you look at this through a transactional lens, and if somebody wants to create real value, monetary value to their art, to your point, you really need to be a road dog at some point. And if you're not capable of doing that, well, then the other end of the spectrum in 2025 is that you've got to be all over socials. You got to be hammering TikTok. You got to be hammering Reels. You know, you got to be live. You got to be, you know, releasing all this stuff. And most importantly, it can't always just be your music.
Nope.
You have to put yourself out there, which is something that a lot of artists, you know, because like a lot of purists will say, oh, that, you know, that artist is shit. I don't get it. But then you watch their social media and you're like, you're pretty fucking funny, you know, and I drink coffee every morning too. You know, there's these human connections that they're making that historically artists never had an ability to do.
Right. I mean, I wish we had it when we were coming up. We were starting to happen, but it wasn't at that level.
Yeah, so like talk a little bit about maybe some advice for a potential young artist that's like, you know, because if you just look at the reality of music and music distribution, and, you know, when an artist like a Hayes Carl, you know, releases, you know, tens of millions of downloads and he gets a check for $382, right? That didn't even pay the tax on the studio time.
Right.
You know, but on the flip side, he's really kind of funny on his socials and things grow. Like, what are you going to say to somebody that's like, wants to be creative, is good at being a creator, but is staring at a void in which they have no idea where the dollar is going to come from? Yeah,
I think social media is a tool, but you still got to get outside. And I think what is really cool about this time and era, you're not tethered to a venue. Yeah. If you take your money and invest in a decent sound system and, you know, order some pizzas for a couple of your cousins and figure out a way to make it work, it's almost like we're going back to the basement shows. Yeah. You can create an audience and create a scenario where you can build that following. And then when you get so popular, you can negotiate with the venue.
Well, and there's also a byproduct of that when you do these kind of basement shows, right? Because I'm watching my son in real time. He's down in Belmont. He's got his crew. He's playing. They are hyper focused on house shows.
That's it.
And when they play the house shows, their Insta blows up.
That's
their
it.
TikTok blows up, and those individuals become fans.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're not buying CDs, they're not buying vinyl, they're not doing any of that yet because they're broke college kids.
Let me speak to that. And I'm glad you brought that up. That's what we saw happen with us. Mm-hmm. When we first got out, we were with college kids. And so a show and a pop-up was fun for them. As we grew and our fan base moved away, they started to change their buying habits. Mm-hmm. The tickets got higher, but they would buy them. The merchandise got different, but they would buy them. And so what you have to do is build a fan base and grow with that fan base. And for a lot of young artists here in St. Louis, the possibilities are, and we have so many third spaces that need to be activated that people would give you the space for free. Yeah. Just to see somebody on it doing something positive.
And this is a byproduct of because we experienced it over at Gaslight when COVID hit. Mm-hmm. The traditional expectation and the track or path of music in this town was you had about 10 venues. You could just basically group them by cap, mm-hmm. right? You got 2,500, then you got 1,000, then you got 500, then you got 300, and then you got 150 and 80. Right? Yep. And they were grouped all through there. Here comes COVID. Now, none of them matter.
Yep.
You can't go out inside. Mm-hmm. So we start dropping off sticks and boxes on our roof, and we do parking lot shows, and they were massive. And it kind of was an aha moment for me. To your point, mm-hmm. like, you can go buy that Bose Tower right now for $1,000, right? Mm-hmm. Go pick a park. Just go. You want to build a fan base?
Yeah.
Just grab your PA, go do it, and and that's part of the grind. Now, the ego in a lot of artists are like, no, I need to be paid to play, and take a second and speak to the difference in an artist expecting to be paid to play, mm-hmm. and then that dirty word of pay to play, mm-hmm. in which you got to go out and sell tickets. Because I always had mixed feelings about that. Because at the end of the day, if I am the venue owner, mm-hmm. and you want my room, I'm a venue owner. I might not even know or care about your genre. Mm-hmm. What's the responsibility on the bands to balance that expectation? I'm
gonna be real with you. The ones that are making it, that are creative, they're hustlers. A lot of these new artists aren't hustling. You want maximum return, but you don't want to put anything up. And that's not how this game goes. So let's go back to the third space. We got the Bose Tower, you and I, JB. That works. That's a good sound system. The grass is cut. Everything is great. We got a good situation. We found a power outlet. It works. People are sitting out there. I'm thinking, all right, let's go to Costco and let's get some drinks made and let's charge by the cup. Okay, let's do that. Let's get a grill outside and let's sell some hot dogs.
$2 dogs.
$2 dogs. I'm trying to figure out every place I can put something that's a price point, and I'm gonna pay my people. So if you man the grill and we made $300, I give you $75. I pay you that money, but now I got $225 in my pocket that goes to the next expenditure or the next situation. And what I want artists to do is get in a hustler mindset. You're waiting on people to give you that mind.
Do you think artists are too in the I don't even know how to word it without sounding like I'm dismissing them, but do you think they value themselves too much because they are creatives, and are not really looking at all these other things and expectations that we are kind of alluding to?
Yes, and I'll say that as an artist. I'm not telling artists not. I love myself as an artist. I love my creativity. You have a son that plays soccer. In your world, he's probably one of the greatest soccer players ever.
He eats a lot. I know that.
Okay, exactly. But you also have to look at yourself and say to your son, hey, son, you're playing really well on this side of the ball, but I need you to think about how you can be better over here. It's ongoing. It's never nonstop.
That's actually a great analogy because, along those lines, I mean, I tell you, the real conversations that I have with my son, who is thriving at the game, the game aspect of it, the technical skill, the tactical skill, physical, he's great at all that. What we focus on, Where's your mindset? Are you getting sleep? Are you stretching? Are you resting? Are you surrounding yourself with friends whose social media isn't shit?
Yeah.
All these things.
Yep.
And the parallel is eerily similar, because in the world of music, especially in this town, and we talked about it earlier, talent level is very, very high.
Yeah.
You can go into any corner and say, hey, do me a favor, you got 15 minutes, write a song. And most of these people are going to be able to write a song in 15 minutes.
And phenomenal songs at that.
But then the stuff that are more foundational, that most people don't see,
Yep.
they don't do those things.
I always had a philosophy that nobody owes me nothing.
Yeah.
I am grateful if you give me anything. And I think the reason I've moved up in my career is because I was always teachable. See, I would go out in the park and activate with the group, or we would do whatever, but I would call people like Mike Landau. I would see Chris Hansen in passing.
Yeah.
And I would ask these people, how did they do something? I'm still like that to this day. I'm curious. I always want to know. And I wouldn't expect for them to do it for me. I just wanted to know so I could do it for myself. And I think as creatives and artists, you have to surround yourself with a village of mentors and people who can give you perspective. And don't expect for them to cut a check. Don't expect for them to be the one that lift it for you. Take the knowledge of what they give you and make it work.
The whole cut check thing, I'm glad you mentioned it that way, because the reality is, like, the powers that be, this is what the music community, most of the music community, doesn't really understand. As much as these individuals appear to be selfish and capitalist and greedy, at the end of the day, if you lean into the reality of the capitalism, well, then you have a much better opportunity of understanding your path. To your point, yeah, you write a great song, but show me how you can activate. If you show me any kind of work, most of the people that are really taking the chance and buying the buildings and investing in the PA, they would love nothing more than a local artist to pop.
Right.
But if there's no indicator as to a transactional relationship, i.e. meaning if I put you on my stage, and I've got this overhead, will you put people in the room? Because, it's one thing for me. There's no amount of marketing dollars that will fill a room if the artist is not relevant and, quote, listenable, right? Engaging. It doesn't matter.
I agree. And I mean, again, I'd like for venues to take more risk. But you as an artist have a responsibility to prove to them that you are worth that risk.
Yeah, it's got to be quid pro quo.
Yeah, it has
both
to.
ways.
It has to be both ways. So don't get me wrong. I still feel that these venues need to work better at finding those artists that are worth the risk. But a lot of artists are looking for people to cut a check, give them the space, give them everything because my art is worth it. Well, if that's the case, everybody that creates something's art is worth it, right? And everybody will be millionaires off of this. Yeah. But I don't care what you say at the end of the day, music, sports, anything, even if we need to figure out a way to raise all ties in St. Louis, there will always be a competitive nature to it. And you have to show that you're thinking differently and you have to move differently and you have to invest in yourself. This is the thing that I think people miss, JB. You're going to be broke investing in your own craft. If you're thinking that all of the finances and funds are going to come from outside sources, somebody broke it down to me the best way. I asked them, why don't we see investors invest in music like they do tech items and, the next big AI or whatever? And they said investors want to see 10 times the return on their investment.
Correct.
You may think you're worth 100 times the investment, but if you are unwilling to go out and walk through a neighborhood and hand out a flyer, if you are unwilling to go to Costco's and buy the pack of 400 hot dogs and have your cousin grill them, if you are unwilling to do the things to lift up your music or find the spaces and whatnot, nobody will lean in to you. And I think you have to be willing to do some outside work. Music is only 10% of the game.
Yeah, it's a hamster wheel effect. I love that you bring it up that way because, I would have these conversations with some artists that I would work with in the past. And it was, when they would start to get confrontational about, quote, ownership or masters or whatever else. I'm like, look, at the end of the day, if in fact I am the investor, to a degree, I am not wealthy. This money is not just falling off trees, right? People would always ask me, like, or say to me, "Oh, you're the owner of, Gaslight or the studio." I'm like, "No, I don't own it. The bank owns it, right? I am merely the chief executive debtor."
Yep.
Right. And so where I'm going with this is like this understanding and this expectation where an artist has to be willing to create partnerships. That partnership, when it comes to the equity, is you have choices. You can have 100% of a grape.
Yep.
Or you can start with 10% of a watermelon.
Yep.
And in order to get the watermelon, you need partners.
Yep.
Now that 10% could go to 20, it could go to 50, it could go to 90%, but that is on you to understand the landscape.
And you can build out your contracts that way. So, hey, JB, you have a wonderful studio. You really support what we doing. You love us. And you're willing to give us studio time. I understand that with that studio time, you have rights to our masters. If we were to become successful over time, we would like the option to buy back any percentage.
100%. That's smart business.
Any percentage we have. That's fair, right? Okay, I'm going to give you all 100 hours worth of studio times. At the current, I own 75%. You own 25%. You may, I really don't. But this is what they're comparing against. These guys in the South who did everything out of the mud. The labels went to them with these deals because they were rich before they signed these deals. So, yeah, it makes sense for Universal to go to Cash Money and say, look, we just want a piece of this. You take 90, we take 10. You've already done the legwork. We just want to be associated with the brand. You won't even tour outside of St. Louis.
Yeah, let's take a second to talk about that too, because this is something that I would see often, and I know you know exactly where I'm going with this, is whenever an artist goes in and they spend, the creative life cycle of a project, right, usually starts hammering out some ideas on a couch, and then you structure some songs, and you starts out with 1, then there's 3, then there's 5, and then you play them and you test them out, then you play them live, and then you're like, okay, let's go in the studio, and then you go along, and the life cycle of that could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, it could be 2 years, right? Here's what happens. As soon as that album is done, where is that artist's mindset?
Going to the next one.
Bingo. Yeah. And when do they need to do the work on that? It's day one after that shit is released. I
think you'll understand what I'm going to say with this. Something I've learned about music, it's all a sunken cost fallacy. Once you create, it's really a money pit from the day you start. And sometimes we get lucky and we get it back in certain ways. There were albums that we did that if we look at the numbers, we probably made back what we lost. We broke even. We didn't get rich.
Which is a win.
That's a win. We'll take it as a win. But there are other ones that we will never see the return on investment. But that's not why we create music. We create music because it's authentic to us and this is what we do and we feel that we're really good at it. And as an artist, if you're coming in with the mindset of I need to get a return on investment, then you got to work that shit a certain way to get that return. And if you don't, you have to live with the fact that's the game. And also the last piece to that is sometimes you don't see it right away. Yeah. There are countless stories of artists that put out music 6 years, 7 years prior. It took one TV show to play the song, and then all of a sudden, it's the thing.
Well, that's a great transition because what you're talking about now is a whole other level and layer of the industry. Because we were talking about where does the money come from, right? Most people, the fallacy is that, well, as long as people listen to my songs, I get paid, right? Well, no, that's not how it works. Nope. Where are people listening to the songs? They're listening on Apple Music. They're listening on Spotify. They're listening on YouTube. Yep. You're getting fractions of a penny. Just disregard all that.
Yep.
Right? So then it's like, okay, we know that the path to the quickest dollar, you got to be a grinder.
Yep.
You got to be outside.
Yes.
You got to be engaging with potential existing and or potential new fans, which is that park party. It could be, cobble together a station wagon fund and then hit the road. And you if you can pay your gas and a little bit of meal, that's a win.
And sell a T-shirt or two.
Bingo. You got to have a little bit of that. But then there's this whole other side. Now, look, let me go back to that. That accelerates, that grows your fan base. Now you're at 5,000 followers. Oh, you're at 10,000. Oh, my God, you're at 50,000 and you travel. Now you're getting paid. All right. Are you retiring in 5 years? No.
Right.
But that gig is now a real, more of a fun job.
Right.
The economics of music on the back end, where what I consider real money, where the real money is really in the publishing. It's in sync opportunities. It's in licensing. It's in the shit that's freaking boring.
Yeah.
Call it what it is. Like, in order to go down that path, It's not easy. It's extremely convoluted, and it's boring. And I have a theory, and tell me what you think about this. You know, having a label now for over 10 years myself, and going into it, and even previously having friends that had signed label deals.
Right.
They would always ask me to read the deal because I had, a degree in finance, and just check it out. And my takeaway was the music industry was literally built to be so convoluted in a way that the creative brained artists don't think that way.
They don't.
So when it comes to sync and licensing and all these other things, take a second and just give a tutorial, 30 second, 60 second, like, hey, young artists, here are things that you need to think about, and maybe here's some steps that you need to take, because right now in this town, we do not have that industry to help support these individuals.
I got my sync situation being in Austin, playing at South by Southwest. So this goes into playing shows. We were playing at a rooftop bar. I cannot remember the name of it, so it's something Hog, I think. I can't remember. If you're in Austin, you would probably know what I'm talking about.
Was it vegetarian barbecue?
No. I want to call it the Stellar Hog, but I could be completely wrong, so don't quote me. But the long and the short was we were playing, and this man was in there really vibing to our music. And I saw him in the crowd, but I didn't think much of him. I don't know him. We're in Austin. 2 weeks later, I get back to St. Louis, and I get an email that says, hey, my name's Dave. I was in the crowd. I saw you playing. I loved your style of emceeing. I would love for you to, write some songs for TV and movies. This is the name of my company, Fresh Kicks, and he sent me everything. At that time, we had a manager who's one of my best friends, Alex. He works for Universal Records now. He looked at it and said, it looks like a legit deal to me. We looked at it together, and I signed it. And I said to him, well, I got group ideas. He was like, no, this is not what this is. We tell you the show, and we tell you what we need, and you all work for hire.
We need 45 seconds of vibe.
That's it. And I've done it multiple times for them. I've made some money doing it, And the cool thing about it was I got to be creative, but I had to do what they asked me to do.
Well, let me back up, because I want to point out the reality here. And there's potential artists that are listening like, oh, I could do that. I've got a keyboard and I can write. But if it weren't for you guys putting the money in the local shows into the bank account, and then funding the van, and then creating a 5-hour circle, and then creating relationships, and then probably making the phone calls, you probably were told no on Austin, South by Southwest.
Oh, yeah.
The first few times. You were finally told
we
yes.
didn't even play South by. We played Red Gorilla, and that was a relationship that we built. We were in. So this goes to another thing. Proximity is a mofo. If you can get in proximity to big things, it can change your trajectory. We never got accepted in the South by, but we were down there for 4 years, just playing show after show after show,
knocking on doors.
And those doors manifested in other cities. It manifested in fans, and it manifested in me getting a sync deal where I was able to write for shows like Power and Deputy and all that other type of stuff, right? And so to your point, people think that I'm just going to submit for a sync deal. Do you know how many people submit for sync deals every single day?
I think I've seen the number. I think it's like 50,000 submissions a day.
That ain't going to do you any well. So I'm going to say this to musicians, and they're not going to like it. People are gatekeeping and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, there are some people who are genuinely gatekeepers, and you know who they are. But it's built on relationships. If you can just keep it simple. If you know somebody that's in the sync world, it's just advantageous to say, hey, if you have 30 minutes, I would love to have a cup of coffee with you and just talk about the things that a person like. You're not asking them for anything other than information.
Yeah.
And if they like you, you may form a relationship where they say, hey, here's an opportunity. But they may not give you an opportunity, but the information you glean can go so far.
Well, and here's the other part of that equation too. When artists have the conversation, or they happen to bump into somebody, or they are introduced to somebody that is, quote, a gatekeeper, because that is the reality of every freaking industry. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
There are gatekeepers for a reason. Those are also called the check cutters. And here's the deal. You meet somebody, what the first thing they're going to do in today's environment, they're going to scour socials. They're going to look for your music. They're, whatever your character is in that minute, in that moment, it's not going to matter in the long run, because your full-on resume is for public consumption.
That's it.
So, and here's where most artists, there's two camps. There's those artists that have everything out there, good, bad, indifferent, and that can be a risk, that can be a benefit. But then there are those other artists that we alluded to that feel above the process of putting themselves out.
Yeah. And everybody you don't want to do deals with.
Yeah.
You know, I've met people that could have probably given us an opportunity and me an opportunity, but I didn't align with them. They just weren't my person. And is it money that's lost? Sure, but you have to be able to vet that. But at the end of the day, it's all about relationships and who you know. And it's not a who you know as a flex. Like you said, that's everywhere. We all live in a world where somebody made life easier in some way. You got that job because your auntie knew the hiring people and they said, put their resume in the fold. You know, You got those exclusive tickets because you had a friend that worked at the box office and said, I can get them.
I mean, 30 years in industry, one of my best friends, and this is going to sound so lame and so old white guy, is my accountant. You know, and it's just a byproduct of the reality of the world that you live in.
That's it.
And I think this is where artists like, be proud, be prideful, be creative, do your thing. But, you know, take a second every now and then, even if it's like 5 minutes a day, work on your business side.
Work on your business. And you know what? Treat the people who take care of you with love and dignity.
Yeah.
It takes you nothing. If you had a person who supported you in some capacity, it takes you 5 minutes to message them and say, I have a guest list for my next show. Even if you can't make it, just know that you're on it. I would love to see you. Even if they can't come, they'll look at you and say, well, thank you. You know, when people cut you checks and they give you money, make sure that you're taking care of them at your events and the things that you do. Hey, we went and ordered some extra food, wanted you to have some. We appreciate you spending that money. I got you some tickets, or I put you up front row so you can see and experience what you're investing in and whatnot. We have artists that won't even do that.
Yeah. Let's talk. Speaking of tickets, shows, September 12th through 14th, coming up here around the corner here, right here, out the window from our little chat. Maddie, Music at the Intersection. This is year 3, correct?
5.
5. You're 5, really?
Yes, 5.
Why am I? 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah. It was post-COVID.
Yeah, it was post-COVID. We played it.
Looking at this year, you know, the big font, middle font, little font, and those that know. Big font, you guys have Common, Pete Rock, Patti LaBelle, Lucky Day, Leon Thomas, De La Soul, and Branford Marsalis. There's a lean there. You know, a number of artists kind of in the middle, and then in the small, there are a lot of local names that are etched in there. Take a second, talk about the festival. Maybe, you know, you can just kind of skim over this year's kind of lineup. I want to talk more about the focus of Maddie, because Maddie came about in what I would call the post Lou Fest chaos that was Lou Fest. You know, started to fill a gap, but it hyper focused on a particular style and message and vibe. For the listener, describe Maddie.
Yeah, so all credit to our executive director, Chris Hansen, who has been at the helm navigating this over the last 5 years. And I work close enough with him to understand the intent and the mission. Maddie, we call it Maddie because it's short for Music at the Intersection. When you say it 50 times a day, Maddie is just easier to say.
Oh, yeah.
And the rebranding of it worked perfectly.
Yeah, don't ever call me J. Bernard Charles Anderson.
Yeah, that's a long, it's a long name, right? But this was a call to action for the foundation to celebrate St. Louis's music heritage. And if you pay attention to our festival, that's exactly what it's zoned in on. I think what makes it work is the balance of the national acts and the local acts, you know. And, you know, when you are doing something of this scale and whatnot, you know, a lot of people, local artists, are going to always have their mind on how it should be laid out and whatnot. But that doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, it's a platform that they get that puts them in front of a large community of individuals. And this call to action is being lifted by the foundation and whatnot as a means to be something that St. Louis can feel proud of and own. We want the city to own this festival. It's not our thing and you come to it. It's everyone's thing and it celebrates that. And so with it growing and becoming what it is, it's only a matter of time. I think right now we're starting to grab the culture of St. Louis, the culture that knows the creatives and the arts that are leaning in. But I think it's going to become an institution at some point. And I think we're at that precipice where it's starting. The first couple of years was more discovery, what is this? And we're still in the discovery mode. Not everybody knows us. But now I'm starting to see more of the community like, I've heard of this thing. What should,
Well, like starting last year, the first 3 years was, let's try, because I'm kind of recollecting now. Last year, what I noticed was the messaging, the PR game. Really started to push out more regionally, nationally. It picked up quite a bit of national press.
Yes.
Obviously through a press partner. Again, this is one of those things where I think the festival probably decided, let's spend some money. Let's make sure that we're telling the story bigger into markets that have established kind of heritage interest, other festivals, et cetera, right?
Yep.
And that's grown it. My question, though, is from a genre perspective. We started off the conversation, and you used the term fusion. I look at this lineup. I wouldn't say fusion. I would say this is heritage.
Yeah.
This is heavy jazz. This is heavy blues and soul. It's leaning on the urban side of the equator.
I think Chris would agree with you on that.
And I'm just wondering, do you see in the future the potential for Maddie to maybe create different segments, because within our marketplace, Americana is massive. Country music is king in this market. From a revenue generating standpoint, there's no genre that sells more concert tickets than country music. We have an alternative rock scene. We've got kind of an electronic scene that's really popping off too. Do you see the potential of this thing, like, really, because St. Louis is this bouillabaisse of sounds? Do you see Maddie either expanding within the singular or segmenting into multiple options?
Well, it's starting to slowly go there. Like, we'll have Materia, which is more of the like rave underground thing that's going to be happening on Friday. It's growing. I don't know how fast it will, but I think over time you will see the introduction of additional pieces and whatnot. But at the core will always be the heritage component of it. Again, we're acknowledging St. Louis's music songbook. And yes, Americana is a part of that songbook. But I just feel like right now where we're at, it also plays into who leans into the festival and who's showing up,
Let me ask you this then, the question about the lineup too, just kind of the thought process, because you alluded to it, talking about how alcohol consumption, drinking is on the down. We know that. Everybody knows that. The next generation of kids, they are drinking significantly less. And also their tastes are all over the board. And I think that's a byproduct of how they've consumed music. We all grew up where the records, we still have great record stores here, but we had to go to the record store
and get a CD or set tape
to consume it. But kids today, they just open up their phone and Bing, new music, whatever. So when I look at, again, those 6 big headliners, Common, Patty, Lucky, Leon, De La, and Branford, we're talking about an older generation.
Well, Lucky and Leon lean more towards the younger, but I think we're starting to get it. What I've seen anecdotally, and there's some research around this younger group is not as social as we were. We went outside in a different way, but they are very, very vibe oriented. They like an experience. And I think what the festival is starting to do really good, we went over to Cushman and Wakefield, and they're one of our partners with the festival. They send over lots of their employees as volunteers, which we greatly appreciate. And somebody said something in the meeting when we were telling them what this was last year that stuck with me. He said, what makes your festival so great is the way you activate third spaces. And I think that's where we're starting to pull our younger audience, because in St. Louis, the younger folks here love.
So for the listener, when you say third space, you're talking about that experiential component.
Exactly.
Not just standing there and listening to the artist.
Exactly.
It's what do I do when I'm there?
Exactly. You can walk around the corner and there's a paint activation going on, or somebody might be tucked in the corner doing a DJ activation. Then you go that way, there's a vendor row, and then over there is the food trucks. It's like up the street is the community activation where a kids choir is singing. We activate third space as well, and that is true. And I think where we're connecting with our younger audience is we're allowing them to come in and imagine how they can fit what they do within the realm of the festival. They're going to always have their idea of the artist that they want to play at the festival, of course. And I mean, I think things like Lucky Day Show were thinking about that. And Leon Thomas in particular, he's extremely popular right now with that group. But the way we're allowing them to come in, because as I tell them, because I mentor a lot of these younger folks that are starting to move into the spaces we are in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you all are still vibe oriented. You and I are experienced. We think about it from the experience. You're just trying to do a pop-up tent, play some music, and it's a vibe. I'm thinking about where the permit's gonna come from. Do we need security?
Yeah.
And all of that. And what I try to explain to them is when you get to the point where we're at with the festival, what you learn is to put the vibe within the experience. So when you promote the vibe, what they don't know is that we've thought about security, we've thought about how many people we need to staff everything, and they're just not quite there yet in some ways, but they'll get there. And I think that's where the festival is gonna really connect with our audiences. And I also think where we put this festival at has played a significant role. We have demystified this whole concept for those that are in the creative space that this is just a scary place to be.
Yeah.
It's really not, you know. It's
No.
no. You lived in Chicago for 8 years. It's no different than any other.
Yeah,
major
I was
city.
in Humble Park.
Okay, so,
I was the frontiersman. So I'm with you.
So you get it. And so I think when people come down and they see what the Grand Center Arts District has to offer, it creates an identity and a connection to our city that you can't get in any other location. Like, you know, whether it's Forest Park or downtown. And I mean, anything can move and be lifted and put wherever. But I think our formative years putting it here did a lot for the way we value the core of St. Louis.
Yeah, I love the intent. I love kind of the direction it's going, just really from a messaging standpoint, because I'm a nerd on the industry side. Like, the music is the music is the music. I'm one of those guys like, look, if it's good, people are going to come, they're going to listen.
Right.
But you're not selling tickets because you have a good artist on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Take Lollapalooza, for example.
Right.
Lollapalooza, like this year, I was looking at the lineup, and maybe it's me about to hit 50, but I'm like, who are these people? Like, I had no idea on the vast majority. And then I'm looking at the pictures, I'm watching the videos, and I'm kind of checking it out. I'm like, look, there's 200,000 people there. I admit I'm out of the loop. But the experience that these new buyers and these new goers are having, it does transcend the music.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you guys are like, look, here's the pin in the map. We're going to go from Grand Center, right there at the Fox and, that corner. And we're going to come down Wash Ave, and we're going to hit, kind of the peripheral streets. And we're going to fill it in. This is urban, but it is safe. It is easy. It's logistics. And oh, by the way, there's not going to be Raising Cane's. Yeah. This is going to be a St. Louis thing.
Exactly. And on top of that, I think another reason we get a lot of love is because of the community benefit. So one of my responsibilities was to ensure that we got like literally 3,000 passes into people's hands that wouldn't be able to typically buy a ticket to a festival.
Yeah.
When you hand tickets to a community member and they are able to enjoy something that it may be hard for them to just sacrifice that dollar to do, it creates a buy-in and a connection to this festival that it's palpable. You can see it. And when I'm driving around on my cart during the festival working, and you see that older lady who says, baby, thank you. This is really a good time, and I'm so happy to be here. It means something. Or when you see those young folks who their parents might have not been able to buy them those tickets, and they get to come in and experience this. I know how I felt when I saw artists on stage and I was like, I want to be that one day.
Yep.
It changes the trajectory of folks' lives. And I think that's something that I really love about our festival is that we're very serious about making sure it's accessible.
So for the listeners, give us the pitch. Where do they go? I'll have links to it in the thing, but talk a little bit about the festival, 12th through 14th.
September 12th through the 14th in the Grand Center Arts District, Music at the Intersection. We call it Maddie. You got major artists coming: Pete Rock, De La Soul, Branford Marcellus, Lucky Day, Leon Thomas, Patti LaBelle, and many, many more. And you can go to maddiestl.org to get tickets to the festival. I'm going to give you a quick trick real quick if you're trying to really save that dollar. Right now, we still have the weekend 4-pack pass up. Get 3 other individuals to go in with you, and that's $100 per ticket for a 3-day weekend festival.
Put it in perspective, one day at Lollapalooza this year, I believe, was like $275, $275, something.
It ain't cheap.
Oh my God, yeah. Larry, I appreciate you coming in, man.
Thank you for having me on. This was really a good conversation.
This has been a lot of fun. Best of luck. Keep let me. You gotta let us know too when Illphonics is gonna drop another. You got anything in the pipe? Are you
Get ready. I'll say this. We've discussed 2026. It looks like a really good year.
There you go. All right, I'm going to roll us out of here with a little bit of one of the headliners at the event. We're going to go with De La Soul, one of my personal favorites, because, again, I'm that older guy, so I remember that.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me. Larry Morris from Kranzberg Arts Foundation, Maddie Master, Illphonics MC, and more. U-City grad, right? We got to talk about the high school.
Yeah.
And I'll catch you around the neighborhood. And for those of you listening and or watching, thank you very much. Little subscribe. It's free. It's easy. It's cheap. It helps my self-esteem. And we'll keep these conversations coming. We're out here, De La Soul. Until next time, tell me you're joking. See ya.
The music gives me sun when winter starts.